Hi, my name is May. I'm the co-founder of Virtual Peer, a group coaching service. I'm also a certified executive coach, and I have extensive experience in organizational design, development, and leading transformational change. While I'm not a fellow maintainer, I am someone who has experienced burnout in a previous life as an educator, and I came close to it again when I was a community builder. The first time I experienced burnout, I found myself taking some much needed time out. And during this time, I studied the causes and symptoms of burnout as part of my master's thesis. And I called this Disillusionment at Work. Now, as an executive coach, I've coached many people who find passion and purpose through their work. People like you who experience challenges with personal productivity and performance as they strive to achieve a balance between who they are and what they do. I hope this presentation sheds some new light on the topic of burnout, and if it resonates, that it helps you to better understand why it happens and seek out the support you need to start thriving again. Burnout, as defined by the World Health Organization, is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. The key word here is chronic. This is when workplace stress is persistent and seriously impairs your functioning. It's characterized by 3 dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job or feelings of negativity or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. As you're listening to this, you may recognize in yourself some of these symptoms. Much of the literature on burnout focuses on being able to recognize and manage its symptoms, and many of its causes are attributed to environmental factors. Environmental causes of burnout include the following: feeling like you have little or no control over your work, a lack of recognition or reward for good work, unclear or overly demanding job expectations, working in a chaotic or high-pressure environment, working too much, taking on too many responsibilities without enough help from others, running to keep up, lack of close supportive relationships, and what probably is one of the most important ones, conflicting priorities. These situations create a lot of stress, and common sense begs the question, why continue to work under these conditions? Research shows that there are occupations in the public social services arena, like education, healthcare, social and community work, that carry more risk of burnout. The work you do as a maintainer and a volunteer for the open source community fits into this category too. Much of the work in these areas are considered vocational, a calling, if you will, requiring great dedication. If you view what you do as a calling, it's important then to be aware of 2 other factors that can contribute to burnout. These are emotion and identity. So what do I mean by emotion? It's the strong, visceral connection that drives our engagement and keeps it high. You might think of it as passion or the fire in your belly. It's our why and reason for being. This quote is by Steve Marquez, is taken from Nadia Iqbal's paper, Roads and Bridges. In it, she talks about how there is a common misconception that the labor for open source projects is well funded. In reality, it is largely created and maintained by volunteers, people like you, who do it to build their reputation, out of a sense of pride, or simply as a labor of love because it's something they believe in. Therein lies the problem. This labor of love is deeply personal. You might start a project because you see a problem that needs to be fixed or believe your solution will make the world a better place. Ultimately, it's because you care. And because you care, you give a lot of your own time, emotion, and energy to the project, to the point where it soon becomes an extension of yourself. However, identifying too closely can create problems once the project is released into the public realm. That thing that started out as a very personal, it's no longer yours to own. Much like a parent watching their teenager leaving home, you lose the right to control what happens. Yet you still feel very much connected and accountable for ensuring a successful outcome. In addition to these workplace stresses, there is chronic emotional stress. This is a felt experience, and so there are some emotional cues to pay attention to. These next two slides outline the 6 stages of burnout. This is where you need to pay attention to how you're feeling. Stage 1. So your project is live and in the public realm. You start out as enthusiastic, feel recognized by your peers, and if your project is really popular, your personal brand skyrockets. Users start highlighting bugs, suggesting features. They're very, very excited. This is fine at first, and you want to accommodate all the requests as they come through. But over time, user demands start to accumulate. More bugs, more feature requests, to the point where it begins to feel overwhelming, and you are feeling anxious because the work is getting away from you. Frustration starts to set in as you work harder and faster. But as user demands increase, you can't keep up because you have little or no support. You become mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted, feeling irritable and constantly on edge, maybe always on the verge of tearing up. This is sustained for a long period of time. Until you start to get angry. You feel like throwing in the towel and walking away from it all, but you don't. Out of guilt and obligation to your users, you keep going. Over time, the anger dies down and you resign yourself to the situation. But in doing so, you start to not care so much and disconnect from the work you're doing. That fire in the belly, it's no longer there. This last stage of burnout is when you start to feel apathy, a total lack of interest in your project. You stop caring at all and feel completely alienated. When you're at stages 4 to 6, you start to get into very dangerous territory. This is why. When we're burned out, we get less done and make more mistakes. More and more people depend on the work you do, so there must be some way to keep the fire burning and the project alive. But what do you do? When it comes to mitigating the risk of experiencing burnout, here are some things you can do in relation to self-care. As a cornerstone of our identity, work is the means through which we express ourselves, but don't let it be the only one. Try and cultivate other interests that energize and fulfill you. Build in regular relaxation time for exercise, friends, family, and nature. Practice mindfulness. This has been proven to promote a positive mindset and significantly reduce anxiety and stress. For some people, having some firm boundaries in place helps to reduce the overwhelm and creates a professional and emotional distance, while still allowing you to keep your obligations to work going. For example, delineate your time between work and home life. Have a different physical space for where you work, like an office or a co-working space. Limit scope creep. Build your own product roadmap with clear deliverables and timelines. Publicize it and keep to it. Adopt an upvoting system on proposed features to help with prioritization. Turn off notifications and set aside fixed times to check in and comment on feedback. Ask for help. Accept help. Learn to let go and delegate. You can do this by identifying specific pieces from your work stack that other people can take forward and own. And above all, try not to let your work be everything to you. It's clear more needs to be done. Dealing with burnout is not something to be ashamed of. It's not a sign of weakness, but rather of a system that is broken. To have a thriving, sustainable, and healthy community requires these challenges to be addressed head-on at a systemic level. Number one on that list should be finding ways to promote psychological safety and making it easier for you to ask and receive help with your projects. Ways you and the wider community can do this are by creating a support channel or online peer support groups, building in opportunities to mentor and be mentored, to have community moderators be more demanding of its user base, ensuring quality of feedback is kept constructive and removing toxic members. This next suggestion merits broader discussion, and it's been touched on before by other speakers. But I would also consider monetizing those projects that are in high demand and under-resourced. Some of these may be done already. You may also have some other ideas. The important thing here is to keep the dialogue open at a community-wide level. As creators, we make time to build something that often emerges from an area of interest or passion, and we do this willingly. In the early days, we invest time and energy for our own personal satisfaction and fulfillment. Our passion projects become emotionally charged because it is an expression of who we are, what we value, and what we believe in. This presentation has attempted to provide an overview of what can happen when what we create crosses over from being a personal passion to a public good, and the emotional toll that this can have on our well-being. When the effort to manage expectations becomes overwhelming, it triggers emotions that can lead to chronic emotional stress and burnout. We've covered signs and symptoms to be aware of and the self-care and community support needed to mitigate it. What I've presented to you today is my perspective, not a diagnosis. Please seek out support from family, friends, colleagues, and qualified medical help if you're experiencing these symptoms and finding them difficult to cope with. If you have any questions or feedback at all regarding this presentation, feel free to contact me at may@virtualpeer.co. Thank you for listening.